Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the channel. It's Excoundrel, your millennial dad gamer here, and we are going to be doing a passive tier list for Moco today. Now, I realized on my gadget tier list, I was like, hey, I can't do a proper tier list for this because they all have their own individual use cases, and that's true. Realistically, I probably could have done a proper tier list for that. But with passives, they do all kind of have their individual use cases, but candidly, there are just some that you're going to use way more often than not. So, going to go through each of them, going to explain when and where they're good, when they get used, how good they are comparatively to the rest of them. We're going to go into as much detail as we physically can with this to make it, like a good tier list. We want to do a good tier list here, guys. You come to this channel for good Moco content. Now, there is a load of really great good Moco creators out there, by the way. My friend Echo Gaming is doing Moco stuff right now. I saw that Itzu, I think he's a German Clash Royale guy, the guy that was like #1 on the ladder for ages, has done some content now as well. These guys are pumping out some great content, so I recommend that you go and check them out. Right, shall we start? Shall we start with probably the easiest one to place in S tier ever, Unstable Lightning. Unstable Lightning, and I'm starting with this one because Unstable Lightning is just goated. It's like one of the most useful passives that you can possibly have. 20% chance to shoot lightning at enemies that take damage from your gadgets. Amazing with Snow Globe. It is the whole reason Pepper Spray is any good. You can use it in any gadget focused build, but candidly, when combining it with things like Echo Ring, Precision Ring, and also Time Ring, your gadgets become a powerhouse, and it is like one of the best for that reason. So that is why Unstable Lightning is up there at the top. It is just that good. It's really, really strong across the board. So we're putting it in there straight at S tier because it is just that good. Speaking of S tier, I'm slapping my boy Vampire Teeth in there. Vampire Teeth it's still probably one of the most useful sustain, especially from a solo perspective, one of the most useful sustain passives in the game. Really great in PvP, just for that extra little added bit of sustain. Very good if you need to rely on yourself for sustain. It works incredibly well with things like the speed shot or anything like it works incredibly well with the spin sickle as well. It is just a really great sustain tool that is very I can call it ubiquitously useful in a lot of scenarios, and that's how I'm classifying like S tier. Is it so good like Unstable Lightning where it defines entire builds, or is it just really just a useful passive that can be used in a lot of scenarios? That is why I'm putting my boy a Vampire Teeth up in S tier. It's just very strong. I wish it did it on a percentage of the damage that you deal rather than just a flat amount, but whatever, we're good, we're golden with it is right now. Zapper. It's a tough one. It's like B or C. Frankly, there are very few scenarios where I would actively run Zapper right now. The reason being is every 3 seconds it deals damage. Now, maybe B. Maybe B because it does stun non-boss monsters, which actually when doing certain dojos or in certain scenarios is pretty strong. The stun is more strong than the damage from this thing. This is basically a 3-second stun on non-boss monsters, which is pretty good in scenarios where you've got monsters that are casting, or you're in dojos like in Double Dragon. This is pretty useful. Actually, I didn't use it in Double Dragon, but it is pretty useful for Double Dragon because it just adds that extra stun that stops them from jumping, for instance. So it is pretty solid, but it's not amazing. And frankly, even if when you're running around a map, very rarely you're ever going to find that this is a really useful passive because it hits one random enemy every 3 seconds. If you've got 50 enemies on screen, this does absolutely fucking nothing. It really does nothing. So yeah, not great. Do I want to move that down to C? We'll think about it. Exploded Magic Trigger, very useful. Not S tier because frankly, at the high-end levels of content, you're not going to be using this a lot, but great across the board in general. It helps single-target weapons have an AoE presence. It is the whole reason that some of these weapons and some of these things can actually be functional with AoE. You get the kill on the little monster, it chain reactions, and Exploded Magic Trigger can help blow up entire screens. Some dojos, it's a must-have, because otherwise you're not going to be able to clear the content. For crowd control, if you don't run Explodomatic Trigger, you ain't getting past it. So it's a very, very useful passive in that regard. It can help create an AoE build out of nothing. If you don't run any other AoE build stuff at all, just running Explodomatic Trigger can sometimes be enough to deal with the smaller enemies that are more annoying to deal with. All right, so moving on then, we can go to Smelly Socks. They are kind of bad. Kind of bad. I mean, probably one of the worst passives in the game, personally. The problem is that, for the most part, especially in high-end content, you don't really want to be standing next to the enemy most of the time. There isn't really many situations where actual tanks work at high-end content. And this really only works with the toothpick and shield, maybe the spin sickle, but realistically, it's one of the. In fact, anything is D tier. Like it's probably one of the worst passives in the game. It's almost never used in high-end content. Only very useful in the early game, in my opinion. And frankly, I only used it to get the projects done. So I really didn't even think it was that good. So, you know, I think like ultimately not a great passive. Frankly, I think there are just better passives out there that you would rather have those slots filled with. I can never think of a scenario where I'd rather run Smelly Socks over practically anything in the game. So that's my opinion on Smelly Socks. It's just so niche. Like, why would you need the AoE damage when you've got loads of other stuff in the game that does this? Like, it's pepper spray, snow globe, everything. Like, the consistent damage that Smelly Sock outputs is not in my opinion that impactful. And then you could say, well, what about boss fights where you're running like daggers and you're studying next to the boss the whole time? Well, you know, I'd rather run laser or you know, or something else similar to that. So yeah, I just don't really think that it has a place personally. Okay, I had a work call and then I now I've completely forgot what I was talking about. Oh yeah. So we're at the tier list. This is kind of, I think, a reasonable passive tier list so far. We just talked about, I think it was Smelly Socks not being that great for anything, realistically, which I think is a very fair statement, and I'm never going to take it back. Right, so Unstable Laser. This is really, really good single target. Probably, like, it's probably just the go-to single target passive in the game. So you've got this, which is great for AoE, mostly, you know, a pretty good single target if you're running it with the Zap. What the fudge is that called? Zap, multi-zapper. It's pretty good if you're running with multi-zapper, but this is just great across the board for single target. So, like, 20% chance to shoot a beam at the first enemy your weapon hits on each attack. So basically, you know, with single target, it's only going to hit one enemy. You have 20% chance to just do an extra beam of damage, which is great. So it's a really, really, really powerful single target passive. And if you're going to do any like single target boss fights where there isn't a huge amount of AoE to be concerned about, you're running this passive. It's just the best in the business for that kind of thing. Okay, moving on. We have got Unstable Laser. This is 20% chance to shoot a laser beam at any enemy that takes damage from your weapon or your pets. This is kind of like Unstable Beam, but has a little bit more AoE focus to it. It's not the go-to for single target. Unstable Beam does more damage, but this is pretty good when you are considering like a weapon that hits multiple enemies, adds a little bit of AoE to the mix, can pair really well with Explodomatic Trigger. Generally, it's pretty solid. Like, it's a pretty solid item, especially when you have a weapon that has a bit more AoE focus, because it's going to get more value. You know, when it's kind of like the Unstable Lightning for weapons that have AoE. Frankly, like we don't use a lot of weapons that are specifically AoE. We get a lot of our AoE primarily from gadgets because they have a much greater area of effect and don't usually get blocked. Like, you know, pepper spray is not getting blocked by enemies, for instance. This is great though with things like Techno Fists. So Techno Fists are essentially one of the best users of this item, because especially when you're fighting small groups of enemy, the bounces will all potentially trigger Unstable Laser. But it is a very, very good passive. Again, harder to fit into a build than maybe some of the others up here, but there are definitely some really strong use cases for it. Way better than this thing anyway, that's for sure. All right, Mr. Chicken. Mr. Chicken is also awesome. I love Mr. Chicken. It's great. I will say that it is a pet-based passive. Therefore, you know, pets aren't great. The AI isn't fantastic, and they're very fragile. They can get taken out pretty easily. but it is still very strong. There are certain maps where this is just going to boost your DPS by a massive amount. It's actually really, really good single target DPS, especially if you're running something like the speed shot where you're going to proc loads and 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 loads of chickens. It can be really strong single target DPS boost, but they're pretty fragile and don't last too long. However, still a very, very, very good passive. I was almost tempted to put it in S tier, but frankly, I just think that these top three here are just way more like useful across the board. Okay, so now Healthy Snack. Healthy Snack is pretty good. It might seem like it's not good, but Healthy Snack is pretty good. It is pretty useful in high-end rifts to just boost your HP by a sizable amount. There are some points when you're grinding the higher ends of rifts where your HP pool really needs that extra boost to give you the safety. It is very strong for that, and it is very useful in the late game. Not much else to say about it. It boosts your HP, and that HP pool can be very, very useful, especially for keeping you alive, just in some of these more difficult one-shot scenarios. It can be the difference between getting one-shot by an ability and surviving with a sliver of HP. So good in that regard. Healing Charm. This sucks. The problem with Healing Charm is that it needs to be paired with something. Like most of these, I mean, it's even D tier, if I'm honest with you. Most of these items here are, it's not D tier. There are some situations where it's useful. Most of the passives, though, are self-sufficient. You know, they activate themselves. Healing Charm needs something else to activate it. I'm not saying like Unstable Laser doesn't require something to activate it. It does, but you're going to use gadgets, and anything that's procced by a weapon, you're going to use a weapon. With Healing Charm, you need to use healing. So you can run it with Vampire Teeth, great, you know, but it's a full passive slot to slightly boost the healing from Vampire Teeth, you know. And then for the gadgets, you've got like Revitalizing Mist and you've got Splash Heal. That's a long cooldown for a potential 20% chance to get a slightly bigger heal. Not great. You could obviously use it with R&B Mixtape as well. And speaking of R&B Mixtape's pretty good. It's better than Laser. I wouldn't say it's like A tier, just because the heal is pretty low, but it's okay. Like you can definitely use it in some scenarios, and that sort of passive heal is decent. Actually, it's worse than Laser. So you know, I think it's decent, but not amazing. But you know, frankly, without this, like this requires something else to activate it, which frankly is not great. But there are scenarios that you can use it in conjunction with Vampire Teeth, and you do get like a healthy amount of sustain. And I'm just going to call it better than Smelly Socks, because Smelly Socks absolutely fucking sucks. So there you go. That is my passive tier list. Hope you guys, tell me what you think. Do you agree? Is this good tier list? Bad tier list? Would love to know. Let me know. See you soon. Oh, by the way, subscribe.